No. Can you hear me? Can you hear my dogs barking outside? Karis, could you go get the dogs, please? They're listening to it on the meeting. It says you're muted.
Let's try to go off mute first.
There you go.
How about-
I got you now.
All right, I'm gonna try this.
And the dogs all just came in, so no more barking. Thank you, Karis.
All right, perfect. So, oh, hey, Jared.
Here.
Well, I'm on the Zoom, so if we just want to do speakerphone, we can do speakerphone with no video. So if there's anybody that's, so that's what we're gonna do, Jen. We're just gonna,
Can we still record it?
yeah, we can still record it, right, Jen?
Yeah, sure. As long as you keep it to an hour, because if you make it over an hour, I'm gonna lose it.
I understand. It'll be an hour or less.
Oh, cool. Hey, I go to board meetings thinking that every time.
I said it out loud, so I just, so.
You did, in fact, yes. You jinxed us all.
Yeah.
Ah, I lost you.
I know, I hit the video mute. Just happened. That was weird. Can you still hear us?
I can now. I
Nope.
picked you up mid-sentence.
Okay. All right, that's weird. I mute the video, but then it mutes the audio. Okay, well, whatever. I'll do that. How about that? There
I
we
can
go.
still hear you.
I know, perfect.
Okay.
All right, that'll work. All right, so
Okay, but now for an
Okay.
hour, you're just gonna record my face? That's not gonna work.
you can mute, record the audio.
Yeah, but you want a recording, right?
Well, if you want my face, we can record my face the entire time too, if you want.
Or it'll just be.
Well,
named.
where's the
Yeah,
rest
it'll
of
record
the-
the audio
As long
whether
as we
anybody has to
record
make
it.
their
Yeah.
video.
It'll still record, but
No video.
no video.
All right.
So you can mute this. Yeah, we'll just have the audio. All right. Let's see here, because I have to be able to take some notes here. All right, so we are 2 minutes late. Has anybody heard from Mike?
He hasn't been
Or-
coming.
I know, I'll have to nudge him. What about John? Let me hear from John.
John was here last time.
Mark.
darling.
Who else are we missing?
Margaret is
And
in
Margaret in
travel.
traffic, okay. All right. All right, let's come to order here and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so I was taking notes just before I came here, so if I missed something, I apologize. From last meeting, so I did have a question. I was not able to attend. I was traveling for business, so I was not able to be here. So Darvin did share, so thank you for doing that. Much appreciated. I did see some of the notes. I do have a question though. So based on the output of last week's meeting, what did Chris receive in terms of guidance and feedback from our discussions? Is there any notes or anything that he sent or he received, so he knows our sentiments on the topics?
Yes, yeah, I think he got that. And he did give us some feedback
On
and
floodplains.
gave us two sections to consider as part of the zoning
Perfect.
discussion.
Perfect, okay. All right, so then let's top into, all right, so what I think I'm going to do, I talked to Chris this week. He gave me a call just to see, that's a touch base because I haven't spoke to him in weeks. So I asked him how best would he like our feedback from these topics, and he said just create a document, separate documents, so that way he can incorporate our wishes and sentiments into his language in the document. So I said, that's fine. So what I'll do is I'll put something on our Google Drive and I'll just put a document. What's that, Marilyn?
Yeah, that's his response. So if you go.
No, I know, I read that.
Okay,
I was asking specifically about the meeting minutes, our sentiments to him. So it sounds like they were given, which is good. So I'll create that document. So we have a place to keep that feedback for Chris. So we can point him in that direction and move on with life. All right, so we have, it looks like you guys picked 3 topics from last week, 3 topics: signage, pools, and home-based businesses. All right, so as we start out, we're going to have Pete, Comron, and Mike orientate the group on their findings from the signage subcommittees or subgroups we had. It wasn't even subcommittees, like mini groups. Just review the findings from their little mini groups, and then from there, we'll dive into the topics. Now, signage was the only topic that we dove into in the little sub meetings because we consciously chose some of the high touch, or not high touch, but like most relevant topics that we could get out of the little subgroups earlier this year. And so there were a ton of other topics that we chose not to prioritize and use our time for that. So signage was one of them. Pools and home-based businesses were not. However, I reread those sections before I got here. They were quite quick, so we should be able to kind of get consensus on that. So ground rules. I want to make sure we have ground rules because for these topics going forward, there's going to be so many topics. And also speaking to Chris wanted to double check in on timing and timeline and things like that. And he says that he's on track between now and March to get a final deliverable to the Board of Trustees. I did not have the time milestone list or timeline in front of me because I was swapping between my day job. But that said, that sounds reasonable. I'll go back just to confirm that. But between now and then, he's going to provide us he has got another big section to provide us for our consideration and review. So as we go through these topics, we're probably gonna have to kind of shift up the agenda depending on if we receive something from Chris, we want to be able to turn that back around to him quicker. So that should probably bump up on our agenda to make sure we just keep the flow going. So
Real quick, sorry. You said between now and you think March is
Yeah.
what he's targeting for a
Yep.
final deliverable.
Yep.
We think only one additional opportunity in the interim to review, or
I
you
don't,
think we'll have?
I'm sure we'll have as many, well, I don't know as many as we want, but that topic didn't come up.
Okay,
By final deliverable, you mean the last draft that's gonna go to the board
Correct.
before the board
Yeah.
comments on it?
I think that the goal is to get something to them by April. And so they can start deliberating and doing their thing with the draft.
so one of the things we have to talk about tonight is really thinking about when the next public workshop is going to be, because I have reserved only ZAC committee meeting dates for the rest of the schedule, and we need to talk about reserving this auditorium for a public meeting.
Or we can repurpose one of the meetings we have on the calendar already, like we did this last time. Oh,
Okay.
no, we had a pivot, but that was the original intent. But
So I think it'd be important to touch base with Chris to find out what his schedule is sometime before the end of his contract, so we can at least know what that is.
I'll take care of it. All right, topics for tonight: signage, pools, and home-based businesses. So who would like to start us off on? Oh, I'm sorry, ground rules. So we got to keep this thing going because we have a lot of topics between now and March. We're going to try to cram as many as we can. I really feel, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like we should not be going line by line through with a fine tooth comb. We should keep it conceptual and let Chris write the document, any changes and edits. So if we agree, so for example, I would like to not try to convince others and get into a debate.
Right.
Whether there's consensus on things or there's divergence on things, we note those, we give them to Chris, and we move on to the next topic. Because if we go down a rabbit hole, we're not going to pay deference to other high priority topics that need our attention as well. So I'm trying to be mindful of all of those things. So with that said, signage. Who would like to start us off?
I'm sorry, can we just pause on that for
Sure.
a second? So I hear you, I think. I don't want us to get sucked down into the weeds. At the same time, I think I certainly am interested in reviewing the code in its entirety. And I hope that as a committee, we're also able to then, if anybody has specific questions about language, discuss those as a committee.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. So if you have like, for example, somebody has a proposal to like remove something or add something.
Right.
We say yay or nay, and we kind of document that. We have agreement or disagreement, but we'll move on. We note that for Chris and we move on.
Yeah,
I also think, to your point, after we go through our list, we're going to have a chance to get that draft back from him, and at that point, maybe down the road, closer to March, we'll go through and have the ability to go back through the document to see if there's any red flags or anything glaring sticking out. We'll note.
yeah, and I think to your point, it makes sense, like, we're not gonna sit here and debate
Yeah.
specific language over and over again, but I think it is important that we capture differences of opinion as well, so that it's clear.
Absolutely, consensus and disagreement, and then we just move on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Chris, here's where the team agreed, and here's where we disagreed. Here you go.
but
Put that
here's,
in.
right, here's the decision as a committee we've made, even if there was disagreement. Yeah.
Or even if we even don't have agreement, I'm okay moving on. Like, this proposal, we don't have agreement, we disagreement, this was raised. Here you go, Chris. Because if we don't have agreement, we're not gonna agree on everything. So the first moment we don't agree on topic, there goes the meeting.
Well, I guess, I might propose that if we're not going to come to an informal consensus, that we should vote as a committee. And make a determination as a committee then of what our advice is to Chris regarding a specific topic.
You don't want to wait till the end till he writes it up and.
Well, exactly, when we get a draft back, I'm
Yes,
saying,
I'm sorry.
not like,
now.
let's figure out what we want signs to be and then vote on it now, but when we get language back on signs, for
Yes,
example.
that would help a lot
If,
better.
if there's questions about what's in there, I think it would be helpful for the committee, even if we don't have consensus, to have a committee opinion based upon popular vote.
Thoughts, anyone?
I like it.
I don't see any rationale for voting. I think we just give him bullet points based on what we decide. If we have a disagreement, we note that. It's very simple.
But Rory, if we disagree on something, then what's our advice to Chris?
That's for him to tell us, is the point.
But
He's
I
supposed to
don't
tell
think,
us what our
he's coming to
advice
us for those
We have to
details,
get
right?
For what it's
Yeah.
worth,
We
he's the
wait,
consultant.
can one
He's writing this
person
document,
speak at a time
not us.
here? This is very annoying when there's three people talking at the same time. Rory was trying to talk, you asked a question, let him speak, please.
All I'm saying is that if my understanding of this guy's role, and I may be wrong because he's a paid consultant, there may be some other way he's going to operate. But my assumption is our job is to give him basic raw data input. And he's going to write this document, and we're going to get it back, and then we're going to react to it. If we sit here for the next hour and debate the sign, well, I can guarantee you we can spend an hour on signs. But we don't want to do that. What we want to do is go through the article and highlight the things that are either good or bad. I think based on whatever the sign people committee comes up with. If we have a disagreement about digital signs, let's use that, okay? You want to vote, I say digital signs is a disagreement, okay? What do you recommend? How do we handle it?
Well, and yeah, I hear you. And I think so tonight's discussion then, we disagree on how this looks. Chris, can you please add your language? And then when the draft comes back though, I think that's what I'm saying is I think we have that opportunity as a zoning advisory committee to review it. And if I say like, oh, this isn't what I think the sign language should be, I think it should be this. To me, that's the final step for us, right? Is that we as a committee need to have some final advice to give back to
I'm
Chris.
not arguing that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for this purpose, I think we'd be much better served to go through this. Listening to what the sign people came up with.
Yeah,
all right,
I don't disagree, Rory.
okay, and then from there, having, unfortunately for me, having dealt with this section probably more than anyone in the room, whatever you guys don't have, I'll throw in for what it's worth in terms of the dichotomies that exist in this really interesting set of language.
And we also want to make sure that whatever the public has told us along the way, as we capture that, we're including that as
Mhm.
part of what we're giving back to
Yeah,
Chris.
that's our jobs.
Because we haven't done that yet for our public zoning meeting that we had in October, and we need to do something along
We
those
don't.
lines.
Chris has that information. He's going to be pulling that into the document. But our job is to represent the public here. That's our role in general, to represent the public. Pete, Darvin, do you guys have any?
No, I
Yeah.
think you guys said it both. Here, we are just like, for instance, I got signs. I'm gonna throw out some things I think that are right or wrong. Let him write it, and when it comes back, that's when we, if you like, vote and decide what you all agree or disagree on. Right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my view of it, Pete. I
Okay.
think it's important as a committee with a big piece of code like this, that we are, whether or not we're happy with the results of the ultimate advice we're giving back, that we're clear as a committee that this was the committee decision. And I think a vote when it comes to those topics is going to be the only way to accomplish that.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'm
I
okay with
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Good stuff, Jared.
Okay, so signs, if it's all right, Cameron, I just wrote some stuff down. I'll just take 5 minutes and go through what I think, and then you can add whatever you like. Then after that, we did it together. I mean, I read through this, some of this been, some, you know, what I mean, it was like.
It's hard to remember what
We
it
were
was that I
all
was
over
writing
things, man,
about
right?
so long ago at this point.
Okay, so
It's been a
with,
year.
with being on the planning board, we had to deal with signs quite a bit for the last year, 2 years. The code's difficult, it's hard to understand, and in a couple places, it completely contradicts itself. The other thing is, again, there's no enforcement of any of this, so a lot of our signs are non-conforming, pre-existing, just like we just got done with O'Reilly's, right? We okayed 2 signs, now there's a gigantic flag sign up there, right by the road. It shouldn't be there. We didn't say that was okay. I don't have nothing against O'Reilly's, but that should be there.
So where's
There is-
Dave? Where's
excuse me.
Dave in all this?
Well, he's only got 8 hours a week, so there's no
6.
enforcement.
6.
6. So we have to, no matter what we do here, if we don't have somebody enforcing this, it makes no difference. So that's all I'm saying on enforcement. There isn't any. So, all right, so so I talked about the pre-existing non-conforming signs. They're all over the village. Now here it says if somebody's gonna make any kind of change, then that sign's no good anymore. Well, that's shouldn't be, because like Dunkin' Donuts, he just took off the donut sign because now it's called Dunkin'. It should be fine. So it's a pre-existing non-conforming. Chris should look at that and see what we should do with that issue. 205-13F. Okay, so it says advertising signs that are oversized and type referred as billboards are not allowed in the district. What about murals? Like if I'm from the inner city, murals are beautiful. But in the village, I don't know. Do we want them? We can let Chris decide, and then we should take a vote on that. Right, because like.
And what's the
What is a
distinction
mural?
between a billboard and a mural? Like, how do you
What is a
define
mural?
that?
Yeah.
I don't know, right, that's what I mean. Like they wanted to do it at the,
Reshop,
what shop?
reshop.
Yeah,
wanted to do
the
one.
shop, but we
Oh,
didn't
the
know,
pot
right, the
shop.
pot shop, we didn't know what we should do with that. It was, looked okay, but there was tagging in it,
Yeah.
you know, but we didn't know if we should allow it or not, so he's got to clear, that's got to be cleared up.
Is the distinction product or service being advertised? That's what I thought I read. in
There's
the
some of
code.
that in here.
Yeah, but I feel like that is still so. Like, say there's a mural on the side of a building and it depicts something that is sold in the business that is in the building, but there are no words about the product. It's very easy to imagine there being an argument over whether it's a mural or an ad, and
Yeah.
somebody putting up something that is very clearly an ad, but trying to argue that it's a mural.
Like the shop has people hanging out on a couch or something.
Which I'm not necessarily saying that that I would be against that use. But it's just hard to say what's okay and what's not when it's
Right.
so hard to define it one way or the other.
So-
Or at least when it is so undefined, then there needs to be a line drawn if there's going to be a line.
So
drawn.
allow murals and how to define murals.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, the next one, G, advertising signs are only permitted in the purpose of directing persons to a village hotel and C district or CB district. We only have one hotel, I think, in the village. So that's one of a few of them in here. He's got to just clean this whole thing up. I don't think that needs to be in there at all. 20514, so that's gas station signs. Now, New York State just passed a law about the cash and charge. You have to have two different signs, and it can be a small digital thing, and they have theirs on top. That's a digital, you know, the big one saying cash or charge, but that's New York State law. So you should put that in there. 205-18, the 33% window. 30% of the window can only have signs in it. Well, we have a lot more storefronts that have the whole window is a sign. And then again, banners aren't supposed to be a permanent sign, where we have a couple of stores that have banners that are it just looks tacky. They shouldn't
So-
be there. So again, let's go back to enforcement.
Okay.
Enforcement, yeah.
I just want to make note that I think from the very beginning, enforcement across the board has been an
Yeah.
issue. So when a draft from the committee is presented to the board, there will be a big preface to this that says without any enforcement or any budgetary allotment, all of our hard work will go for naught. So everything in this document must have teeth somehow, and that is on the trustees and the village government to do that. So that's, you know, obviously outside of our scope, but a lot
Yeah,
of it
no, I
impacts
agree.
scope. So it's like, that's going to be a big one to say, hey, here's our draft. You guys are now have to enforce this, or else this
Right.
is just,
No good, correct.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so the next one's a really, in my opinion, a hot topic. It was when I first got on the planning board, this digital sign and the temperature signs. Okay, so if you drive down the Burn Hills, you can see 50 digital signs and video signs, and it looks horrendous. Our village says right now, there aren't allowed any. But our village allows the library and the fire department to put them up. Do as I say, not as I do. We gotta make it, because I had to vote against the church. The churches in our community do a ton. There's a lot of people that should know where you can get free food, what time you can get the free foods. So it was hard for me to say no to the local church. So we asked the village, hey, the library, just take that digital thing and just turn it off. And the same with the fire department. They can turn theirs off unless there's an emergency, then put it on. So we have to decide, one, do we want digital signs, right?
I don't think you're gonna be able to do
And
that.
do we ask the village to do what I said? And I know might get the library people upset. I'm not trying to upset anybody, but I think we gotta be uniform. We can't let the village say, yeah, they're doing it, but don't let anybody else do it. It doesn't
So
make sense.
how about this? This sounds like we don't have all the stakeholders around the table to make that call, because the other part of this is the village hall, to say whether, you know, because it's the firehouse, it's the library,
Yes,
it's the
I'm just giving
governmental
my
entities.
opinion. That's my opinion.
So how about this? We posed to Chris, this topic needs to be discussed with, this needs to be brought to the Board of Trustees, like, because there's a misalignment.
Well, and the critical point in here, okay, and it is in the law, that a municipality does not have to obey
Right,
its own laws.
they're exempt.
Which is grand, except the perception to the average person
Yeah,
is very difficult to explain.
so maybe we do to Chris, like, can we ask the board if we want to still continue?
They've got
this
a digital sign, why can't I have one?
That's the
And-
problem I have with Father Roy.
And it's extremely, we need to address that, okay? And I don't know how, but I do think that it needs to be discussed with Chris in terms of what other municipalities do. I do not think the Village of Boston Spa needs digital or television type signs in it. That's my humble opinion. I think that the library, that sign was installed with no permits, no discussion, no nothing. All of a sudden, there it was with a digital sign. I think that they should be asked to turn it off unless they have something specific that they want to communicate. It shouldn't be on 24/7. And I say the same thing to the fire department. If they've got an emergency, fine. Otherwise, turn it off, because what it does is create all kinds of questions. The church scenario was the biggest one. I don't know if any of you recall that, but the what is it, the Episcopal Church, Peter, Father Roy and his group, they wanted like a 7 or 8 foot television on the corner of 67 because their church wasn't doing well. Well, maybe it is or it isn't, but I don't think they needed a television screen at that intersection. It goes against logic and it went against traffic and every other conceivable thing you could think of. But it was a battle royal, all right? And they were not happy and I can understand them not being happy. And then the sign guys that sold all the signs, AJ, they insist it's the way of the world. This is where everybody's going.
We've got a lot of churches in town. If every church has a digital
you.
sign,
We
we
got
would in
six.
Las Vegas.
We have six
That's right.
of them. You're
And
right,
that was
six.
exactly my point, okay? And it's the same thing on Front Street or even on Route 50. You've got people don't know what the real rules are and we don't have anybody enforcing them. It's, you're downtown, okay? Your sign is perfectly tasteful and all of the rest of it. Is it legal? I wonder, okay? Because the language in the sign book says above the lintel.
What does lintel mean? Did anybody know lintel? I had to look it up. Did you know what lintel means?
I think we discussed it with Dave while we were.
I had to
having
look it
this
up.
discussion.
I said, what the hell's a lintel?
Enlighten me, please.
Excuse me?
What is it? Enlighten me.
Oh, it's above the top of the building.
No, not the top of the building, the first floor, I believe.
Well,
I thought it was the top of the building.
separating the first floor from the second floor.
No.
Theoretically, that's sort of it, okay?
mezzanine
But
section.
again,
See, I still-
A facade.
when you start,
Yeah. that's
when you
kinda-
start looking at all of our signage in our village, you're gonna find all different kinds of signs. And we need to simplify this so that
Yes.
you don't have to go to get a variance to put a sign up. Okay, at least this is just my thoughts. I think there's a statement in here that says non-conforming signs may continue to be used unless it shall not survive a change in title, change in use, or sign replacement. Why? We need to have some clarification of things like
Let's
that.
go,
That was my
let's
first
go back
point.
to digital signs real quick before we move on. to
Yeah,
next.
I just say,
I want to see, like, all right, so sounds like there's a hypocrisy here.
the whole section is hypocritical. It's really amazing.
No, it's not, because it does say it's a prohibited sign.
It's a
No,
hypocrisy
it
in the
says
sense
a
that
digital time and temperature sign is. prohibited.
Other entities
That's all
within
it
the
says.
village can do it, like official government
Yeah.
entities can, but according to this zoning code, others cannot. So that creates this public, like dichotomy, like why can they do it, but we can't? So it seems reasonable that it's a perception. What do we want to do about digital sign? Does it make sense to ask the Board of Trustees to consider not doing this or consider with this, what the zoning law currently says and have the dichotomy? Because that's what's on the table. We either rectify that the municipalities cannot have municipal signs are no bueno and they should adhere to the zoning, or stick with what we have in the zoning. I think that's the question I'm
There a
hearing.
third
Anyway,
option?
Well-
there's a third option.
We allow digital signs with specific guidelines.
Not.
I mean, this might be an unpopular opinion. but-
Maybe that have to be turned off by a certain
Exactly.
time
You
of
turn your
night or
signs off
something
by
like
10
that,
PM or
which then,
something.
I don't know.
I'm not opposed to digital signs. I hear y'all and I don't want to turn our village into Disneyland or Las Vegas either, but I think digital signs can bring businesses value at the same time. I think there's an issue if we're not allowing businesses to do it, but we're allowing public services to do it.
But that's the law. We don't make the law. That is the law. Governments are exempt.
But I'm saying
Right,
that's
right. But
wrong.
so I hear you, Anna. So it sounds like either way.
No, it's not. It's a state law.
But that maybe goes
You
back
can't
to,
go against the law. The law is the law.
And
You can't just, you talk to council, they're gonna say, you can't do that because that's the law.
But we
We
can't
can't-
ask the village not to have them
Well,
on.
if you wanna ask them,
That's
but
what I
you know
mean.
what they're gonna tell you.
I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying is we either can either ask either to honor the code themselves, keep the code as is, and so keep that
Right.
difference.
Yeah.
Or we
Do what he said.
entertain the idea of
Yeah.
having digital signs with restrictions for all.
and I think that goes back to the bigger question that I think was my big takeaway from this section. Which is that I think, first of all, there are two things that this section needs to deal with. And compared to the rest of the code, I think there's the question of safety and the question of aesthetics. And compared to the rest of the code, this is much more focused on aesthetics than the safety side. Yeah, I mean, it's still there. I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying that the bulk of the language is less concerned with safety than with aesthetics. But all of the aesthetic part is supposed to go back to, it starts with needing to adhere to design guidelines that don't exist. So, and theoretically, I think those design guidelines are supposed to embody some generally agreed philosophy of how we want the village to look. Not necessarily that says you have to look like this, but there are things that we want to avoid, that there are things that we want to make sure that we maintain a particular character or whatever those end up being. But I think if we did a better job of answering the question of what we want those aesthetics to be, then we could make a stronger argument on a question like digital signs, where we can say, we put in the code that we don't want digital signs. Now, when we go to the municipal entities and say, these are the reasons that we said we don't want digital signs, how can we kind of negotiate to say, turn them off at a particular time, or we don't want that? If we had a stronger statement of why we don't want that there, given that it's not a safety question, it's an aesthetic question. If we had a stronger argument of why that is, then it might be easier to have that conversation of what these entities that are entitled to do it, why they should not do it, even though they're entitled to do it.
I think that's a good pitch, and it's, already in the code. There is a statement that the Board of Trustees sets the sign design criteria. So
Which had never been
that
done.
can be done.
Yeah.
That can be done.
It-
And the other thing is, there are pieces of this code that actually do address, if you want to call it, the health and safety criteria for these signs, because it does refer to signs that flash, are intermittent, rotate or move, the lights move, and all of those are characteristics of digital signs. So, I'd like to hear if the small breakout group actually had a recommendation on that. Otherwise, I think this is something for a bigger discussion later down the road. To recommend that the trustees go back and do this sign design criteria.
I think my memory of what we decided was that nobody really was particularly excited to see digital signs, and we were happy with what was there, but that there were clear exceptions to it.
Yes.
So there wasn't really anything that we could do about. So I mean, basically it was, there's nothing wrong with the language. There's just nothing we can do about the fact that there are exceptions.
However, if we're going to keep them in there, we do need to expand and further explain what a digital time and temperature, that was one of the attorneys.
We'll be able to-
So I brought this up.
Make sure that we have that, because that was one of the arguments from the attorney for the Christ Church, that what they wanted was not that, and therefore they were okay. So that the language and the definition of a digital sign needs to be expanded.
I said the same thing to Dave when we were having this discussion at the time. And he pointed out that elsewhere, that particular line that prohibits digital signs says temperature or time, and I brought that up specifically. And he pointed out that elsewhere it says that signs can't be intermittent. So it's prohibited elsewhere also.
515C.
So if you have a lit sign that doesn't ever change and doesn't have temperature or time, then you're okay. But if you have a sign that ever changes, and I guess intermittent can mean if you ever turn it off too, so.
So he
Okay.
just
What
got-
about
he has
being a
to
digital
clarify
sign if it's static, right?
Yeah, a static digital sign that you can't turn off at any time ever, even if there's a blackout.
And just, I mean, to continue this lunacy, gentlemen and ladies, 205-15H. No sign shall have a source of illumination directed at a public street or adjacent property. Oh, Okay, so where's my sign gonna face? What is it? I mean, that's so
Source of
ridiculous.
illumination. The
Yeah, okay,
illumination
but
cannot.
so therefore a digital.
A digital sign is illuminating off
And
of the
lighting up
property.
F,
They're
please.
saying just face it back in the building. for
So,
lighting up.
But I think, the point being, I take your point, Anna, but it's actually prohibited elsewhere in other ways.
It really
Instead
does.
of-
But yeah, the no temper time thing is just pointless and confuses the situation, even though it
Exactly.
is.
That's also a relic of the nineties, right?
Yeah.
When
Correct.
the only digital signs that you could have were
Right.
like
That's what they made.
CRT
Yeah.
and it was a clock and,
Right.
you know, a temperature.
Exactly.
All right, so one last thing I noticed, the 205-15I, one sign in the CBD district. Yeah, I laugh about that because everybody's got at least two. So I don't know, we gotta change that, and the sizes, the signs, like all these, their signs big, they have a big building, job lot, the same thing, O'Reilly's, so. Maybe the size of the sign is based on the size of the building. Maybe they are allowed two signs if you have a parking lot, one on the building, one on it by the street. So Chris has got
Or
a
corner.
corner, sure, so Chris has got to, clean that up too.
So clean it up in what regard?
Well, right now it says one
one
sign
sign.
per store in the CBD district, right?
But what I'm really understanding is, do we need to remove the one sign restriction?
Yeah, a lot of them have two. I mean, well, the stores that have two parking, and the size of the sign, what is the size?
16 square feet.
Which is small for an Aldi's or small for a Dunkin'
Oh,
Donuts.
right, right.
It's
And
really
it's specific regardless of the size of the store.
yes, so he should maybe
Exactly.
change it based on the size of the store.
Or how
And
far off the
Setback,
right of way it
size.
is.
Yeah.
That's it. And maybe two signs if you have a parking lot. So you have one, on the corner or when you pull into the parking lot, and one on their building. Something like that. That's what I would suggest. I mean, that to me makes common sense. And there was a couple of things in there that when he cleans this up, that there's two paragraphs that completely contradict each other, and he'll see that and he'll take that out.
Which one's it? Oh,
Excuse me?
it's the same, 205-15.
Two-
Oh, it's,
the
it's,
one with the sign?
it's not one specific one. I think it's all of them.
Anybody else has anything they want to add?
Did you guys address sandwich boards at all?
Excuse me?
Sandwich
Yeah, well,
boards?
sandwich boards, so they're supposed to, again, but that goes back enforcement, right? They're not enforcing that. So they put them in front of the store, which I'm fine with, but many times they don't come back in, but that's enforcement.
But they don't know, they're not always in front of the store. That's why I'm saying.
Oh.
There's signs down
Well,
in
you're
front of the
allowed to
post
put 'em-
office. So
If you get
are you
permission,
guys
you can
okay
do
with
it.
that or are you? not
I,
okay?
I also found some of the prohibitions for what could be on signs to then conflict with the question of, so you're allowed, I think it was, you were allowed to have one sandwich board, right? But you are not allowed to have advertising that includes specific products.
Correct.
On the board, right.
So, which is not enforced at all, and I'm not sure should be enforced, because then what's the point? But, I think it goes back to, there are a lot of things that seem like people said, oh, well, what about this, and stuck that in, but then it conflicts with other parts of it. And I think it's pointless to go and say, well, what about this, what about this, what about this in here, because I think there are so many things that conflict that I think we need to go through and kind of list, we need to do less kind of addressing what is in here and more saying what is the reality and what do we want it to be, because if we try to fix what's in here, we're going to end up with more things that conflict. with
Well, I
other
think that
things.
was what I was saying. What, do you guys think that signs should only be in front of their own business? Or should they be down the street at the corner of 50 and Front Street advertising a business that's down the street? Did you talk about that?
I didn't talk about it. Like if something's on the side street, like there's a bakery in the side street, they put their sandwich sign by the bank so
Yeah.
everybody could see them.
Right. And it's a directional sign, kind of pointing the person either up the hill
So,
or down the block.
I guess what Ann is asking, do we want that? I mean, to me, being a small business owner, if I was there, I would want it,
Yeah,
but that's up to you guys.
I'm not opposed to that, honestly, and like we see the ones
But,
for.
but they gotta get permission from the bank to put it there, and they
Yeah.
gotta take it in at night. I don't know if they're taking it in at night or not.
No,
That's the whole point. 205-14-9. Okay, if you really want to just laugh, this is astonishingly complicated. A sandwich board sign should be 2 by 3 feet wide tall and may be placed upon the sidewalk only in front of the business for which it advertises.
Right.
And parentheses, in other locations with the consent of a property owner. Okay, so it can only be in front of your business, but if your business says it's okay to put one in front of yours, I can do that. Said sign shall be placed as to not interfere or obstruct pedestrian traffic. Try walking down Front Street. Okay, the latest one is, well, the Medbury's one, but is it the Iron Roost or the other?
Whistling Kettle?
Whistling Kettle. There's a bloody sign right in the middle of the street says, don't smoke. It's a sandwich board sign. It blocks the whole bloody sidewalk.
Now, that's in front of the Whistling Kettle,
Yeah, well, it
But there's
still
al-
shouldn't be there.
but there's also the outdoor patios, which you could say, or.
Well,
which are
that's a whole,
also
that's a whole
you know,
separate
which
subject.
are advertising their services that are also on the sidewalk. or the
Sandwich board-
Medbury
Sandwich board shall be removed
has
daily
their sign there.
at the close of business unless there's a specific event. And only in such case may the sign be located 7 days prior to the event and shall be removed immediately upon the conclusion of the event. The term specific event shall mean la, 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 la. I mean, again, clarity, simplicity, straightforward language would be really much better. for
And,
this
and I
area.
think also considering the purpose of why people want these in the first place.
Exactly. I won't argue that
Which
either.
I think,
They're like the flags.
yeah, so thinking about, you have to have a sandwich board only in front of your business. But is that necessarily what people, the advertising that people want? Does it differ depending on the location of the business? So maybe the purpose of it is there's a business that is harder to find. Is there some way that we can accommodate something that is, I can't think of a good example of, but maybe something that is close to Front Street, but off of Front Street. That can, but yeah, like just thinking
You're
through
right.
what the purpose of these things are when we write the language for how they
Alright,
can
so what
be
do you want me to
used.
tell, what do we want to tell Chris?
Does he have any draft language around sandwich board signs?
Okay.
Right, cause I think I hear what you're saying, Cameron, and I think that's Pete's
It's also
point
incredibly
also, is
complicated.
like Nightworks bread is tucked away, they wanna get business, so how are they advertising?
Yeah. Cause
And I think if you try to start specifying, if you're in these locations, it's okay, then we're getting really touchy, not only with the code, but with like privileging certain businesses based on location.
Yeah. Right, I
Yeah.
agree, so it's not a no-win situation.
All right, time check. We have 20 minutes to 2 more topics. Anything else on signs?
Yeah, Rory touched on it, feather flags.
Yeah,
Did the
they're,
group discuss that?
Yeah, I
And,
did, I said there's no enforcement of it. That's the,
Okay.
I mean, that's the bottom line, they shouldn't be up, so.
and I'll just mention, I mean, Town of Milton, North Line Road, Route 50. One business up there several months ago had 13 or 14
Mhm.
feather
I
flags
remember.
in front of their business. Is that really what we need in the village when a new business invests?
Are they allowed right now by code?
Not our code, no.
Okay, so are we going to ask to have them allowed?
Well, they are used in the village.
Right.
What
But-
I'm asking is.
Well, they're in
if
the
a
Enforcement,
group-
are they legally in the code?
They
or no?
are for one,
Okay.
for, yeah,
Well,
flags are for, yeah,
Advertising.
that's the
As
code.
flags,
As a
okay.
But for
temporary.
one and for temporary,
Yeah.
correct.
right, and,
So what are
and
we
I
asking
think
to
the
change?
other issue here is
Do we
the
really? need
definition of
feather
flag,
flags?
when this was written, was just that, a flag,
Yeah.
like 4-H flag.
Yeah, yeah,
The vertical flapping flags
Open
are the
and-
new thing.
yeah.
Okay, and they're definitely not addressed in the code, but they're everywhere. And I question,
Okay.
So he has to write something about
we need
flags.
to
Feather flag,
clarify.
okay, definition.
I mean, I
Modern
think
vertical flags.
our discussion at the
Vertical.
time was, I thought we concluded that they were pretty clearly prohibited, but it was another enforcement question.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
Yeah, right, yeah.
So we're asking
there's
Chris
a
to
9
update the
10 foot
definition.
one in front
to
of
include
O'Reilly's.
modern vertical
I
advertising.
know they didn't ask, they
Yes.
didn't get a permit for
We
it.
want them
It
only
shouldn't be there, but we
temporary,
don't have any
right,
enforcement.
temporary.
to
Is
do
that what the
anything
code
about it.
currently says?
I believe it does.
Okay, I believe.
Rory, does the code say temporary for these flags or?
No, it doesn't say anything.
Oh,
It
it
says
does
they
say
should,
anything.
well, this is 205-13. Oh, sorry, 205-14A10. Advertising.
The others,
Shall not exceed 3 by 5
Should
feet.
not be less than 9 feet off the ground. There's nothing about temporary. It just says if they become weather worn, tattered, torn,
Right.
as determined by building inspector, they must be. So there's
Alright,
nothing
so-
about temporary permanent.
They also almost exclusively, I mean, depending on how you want to define them, they will violate something else. They'll violate the question of heights per flags. They'll violate the prohibition on specific advertising. They'll violate the number of signs a business is supposed to have. So regardless of how you want to define them, they are prohibited in one way
So
or
he
the
should write
other.
up whatever they're doing now and put it in there.
The
And
modern
do
vertical.
we
advertising
want
flags
to
and
have
whatnot.
advertising flags in the village?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think really they do much.
I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan either.
No.
I don't think it adds anything to it.
No.
Do you guys, what do you guys think?
And it's hard to imagine many locations, other than certain parts of Route 50 where they aren't obstructive or.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
Another one that
I don't think. it
we
adds
haven't,
value.
we haven't hit on, but we should hit on.
Darwin said it best. He doesn't think it should add any value. He's
Yeah,
right.
'cause it doesn't add value, you know, going back to what you're saying about purpose, right? What's the purpose? If you have a business on Bath Street or on Science Street, you're trying to get that traffic to come to you. And any way you can do it, and right now the digital is the best way to do it, not, you know, putting stuff in the way of the road, because it's just not being utilized. So you get the best bang for your buck by using digital resources, geotagging and other methods to bring
Right.
people to you. It does help though to have physical signs so people know when you open, you're there. Temporary would make sense to me.
Mhm.
If you say, hey, we're new, like the
Yes.
folks next door.
Sure. Yeah.
She just opened, right? She's been there a couple of months now and she's like, I'm trying to get people to come in. She could use some signage temporarily, right? Something like.
I agree. All
Okay,
right.
time check. We have 2 more topics, 15 minutes. What do you want to do, guys?
Let me just throw this last piece in, because I think this should be addressed. The code says that if you have a window and you have a sign and it can only be 33% of the glass area, okay? But I've seen businesses where they have 2 or 3 windows. So now they have 33, 33, 33. Then at night, okay, they're lit up like Christmas inside. So that essentially they are an illuminated sign, okay, from the inside. The business is gone, but it was the pot store down on Route 50. It bothered me because I would drive by it every day. We need to look at window signs and talk about what can they be? How can they be illuminated? And at night, what do you do with them? So again, to the recommendation to Chris is give us some straightforward sign language, no pun intended, okay, that he has for these various issues. You know, this has to be a problem in every municipality in some way or shape or manner or form. But it certainly can't be as complex as this is.
I think my big takeaway from all of this is there are a lot of things that people are getting around in one way or another. But also there are reasons for that. So businesses are trying to do what they can to attract business, to make sure people know they're there. And whatever we do, people are going to try and do whatever they can to get their name out. We need to make sure that whatever rules we have are well-defined in terms of, first of all, what you're allowed to do, but second of all, what the objective is for the rule.
Absolutely.
So why are we trying to not cover a certain amount of the window? Is there a safety reason for that? Is there an aesthetic reason for that? What's the justification behind that? And everything else needs to follow that. So if we want to say there's this percentage of the window you can cover, there needs to be a reason. We need to say it's because of this. So that when we go and say, well, you can't have this there, there's a reasoning for it. When people try to get around it in a particular way, there's a reason that does or doesn't follow the justification, rather than just saying, well, the old code said you couldn't have more than this percentage and we want to change it to this percentage. I just feel like it's very easy for this subject to become arbitrary if we don't kind of have an overarching principle for what we're trying to achieve with the sign guidelines in the first place.
All right, do we want to move on to pools?
Yeah, why not?
I just have one question. So did the group say there was something they thought they should do for the non-conforming workload of signs? the ones that are more egregious right now.
My feeling on that subject, especially after we talked to Dave about it for quite a while during our discussion, was that that really felt like something that was going to be a losing battle unless it was, we prohibit everything. And you either can't have anything grandfathered in, or everything is just gonna be grandfathered.
To answer Mary's question.
It felt like based on our discussion and our discussion with Dave, it felt like there was just no way to accomplish it.
To answer Marilyn's question, that question is gonna be posed to Chris, what to do about pre-existing non-conforming signs. See what he says. All right. Pools.
That's a quick one. Anna, that's your subject.
And Margaret has all the notes, but as I recall, we didn't have a lot of issue with the pools. Yes, they cannot be in the front yard.
Setback.
The setbacks, everything, except that I think that the current code says 15 feet from the primary structure, and we thought that was ridiculous and wanted to lower it down to 10, or I think somebody said
I agree with
5,
that.
which I think 5 is. Yeah,
There's some state law
What
regarding
section is
this, I think,
205-46 is swimming pools,
in here,
right?
okay? But I believe there's also state code as far as swimming pools and
That it
distance
is
and
now.
fencing and alarms. When you know, you just put one in, okay?
Those are in ground though, right? Not above ground. is
The
that-
rest, well, they're.
Every pool is supposed to be 15 feet from the primary structure right now.
That, yeah, but not state code. That's that. code
Right, that's
here.
our code.
Right, yeah. So I think 10 or 8 feet or something like that is better than 15 feet.
Especially
But it
in
doesn't
college.
necessarily.
Ask Chris to verify the New York State code for swimming pool distances, setbacks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's just as good too, right?
Is that already going to be kind of, is that number going to matter when you consider that you have to have your pool enclosed by a fence, then that fence has to be a certain distance from structures anyway?
Still matters.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean, from my experiences in building.
Yeah.
Okay, and building inspectors other than here, it absolutely becomes an issue.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, will we define a number, and then that number is completely irrelevant anyway, because you can't actually put the pool
We're
there
not gonna
because the
ask
fence
Chris to
has
put
to
a
be a
number.
distance from.
So the question I have is to lower the distance from 15
It's a good question.
from the primary structure to something else, also verified with New York State code, aligned with.
There you
New York
go.
State code.
There you go.
So
Let's-
yeah, we're not
Alright.
dictating with, specificity. Anything else on pools?
Nope. That was quick.
Home-based businesses.
Okay, so my take on that is, that's the way the world's going. But it can't be retail. You can't have anybody walking there or driving there. We can't have a cash register there. It's just a home-based business. I mean,
You mean retail or?
well, like for instance, let's say I want to move Village Photo to my house. I can't have customers come to my house. I can't have, all my business is outside. I have no business where I'm located now. Nobody comes to me. No customers can come to me. So I'm just using that as an example. So the home-based business, you can't have like cars driving down. You can't have any kind of, like, when I say retail, I mean, like, how would I word that? Yeah,
So let's say I'm a piano teacher
right.
and I have students come to my house.
No, I
Their
don't-
parents
I don't
bring
know.
them. They take lessons. I do
Right.
lessons 3 days a week. And they pull into my driveway, have a shingle out front. I give music lessons.
So that's what I'm saying you can't have. You
I think,
can't have
I
people
think
come-
really we need to ask Chris to give us a modern definition of what a home-based business is.
Mhm.
Because the world has changed in 31 years.
Yeah.
And there are other businesses that we definitely don't want as a home-based business.
Right,
And there are others that have been traditionally those things that are home-based businesses. And then other things that would blow our mind, like people that work from home or companies, corporations that actually work in their home for the majority of the time, doing their business. not having anybody walk in, I think those things should be allowed.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So no walk-ins, no driving, but I don't know how he would word that.
All right, so
You can't
provide
have
a,
anybody going to their house.
provide a modern definition.
Yes,
Also concerns with pedestrian and traffic/parking issues.
correct, right?
And noise issues.
Noise.
Noise, right.
We don't want like manufacturing and
But let me
someone's.
ask you this, so
Biggest
babysitting,
We don't want adult-based businesses
That's
in a
something.
residential area
now
where there's a
babysitting,
home-based
are they
business.
exempted? Is babysitting exempted? Does anybody know?
Or,
Babysitters?
or like.
Well,
a
this
home
is,
daycare.
I think in
Yeah,
general, that
daycare, yes.
is.
Because I got one right across the street and they're screaming and yelling all the time. And we're in a cul-de-sac and we get 20 cars in the morning, 20 cars at night. But is that,
I got one too.
are they exempt to the state? Excuse me?
I have one 2 houses down from me.
Yeah, is that exempt?
I-
Is that, are they exempt?
I would think the
I
opposite.
don't think so.
I would
They're not
think it would be
prohibited.
more regulated in terms of.
They're regulated by the state
Yeah.
of New York,
Yeah.
but he's saying from a community
Yeah, are we
standpoint,
putting
is that
additional-
allowed? to
We
be
all are
They-
complaining
they-
about
happening
it.
In your home base?
Same with your music. So
Yeah.
everybody in our neighborhood hates it because they're running stop signs, they're late for school, you know? And we don't mind it, but it really disrupts the whole, couple hours in the morning, couple hours around
I
4
think
o'clock.
if we ask Chris for that modern definition of
yeah.
a home-based business, knowing that it has, expanded into the internet,
I like it. Yep.
global enterprises.
I've been
you
working
know.
on for 5 years and that's the definition you laid out is what I do.
Yeah.
I've got an office and.
I don't see anybody.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Work on the computer all day.
Yeah.
No,
So,
but you're a guy running a big eBay business, which has got boxes and boxes that he has UPS come by and pick up. There's a problem.
I don't care. I really don't care. It's his problem unless it becomes a problem with the neighborhood.
Well,
And
that's the
there's
point.
vans,
Yeah,
and there's
exactly.
vans pulling into neighbors' driveways or being disruptive, or it's happening
A
at
modern
midnight.
definition of a home-based
You know.
business.
Yeah, and then the concerns with pedestrian, traffic parking, noise issues. I've got a little side story. I've got a daycare 2 houses down and I hear the kids screeching during the day and stuff. It seems really nice during the day and it's almost like they're like crayfish. The crayfish of the stream. So if you have crayfish in your stream, the stream's pretty healthy. So I like to see them, hear them in the neighborhood. I'm like, oh, I've got a nice healthy neighborhood right here. Kids running around screaming. All right, anything else in home-based businesses?
Just real quick, is there a limit of the number of customers that would be acceptable? Or you can't let anybody come in? Thinking of
It's a slippery
the
slope.
music tutor.
I'm not advocating for not letting people come in, because I gave you a good example of a traditional home-based
Yeah.
business that's been around for, couple hundred years. I don't see that as a problem as long as the current infrastructure can accommodate
Yeah.
that. And you do that by having Chris advise you,
What the definition is.
yeah.
And isn't
That's
some
right.
of that taken care of if they get a variance, then some of that is taken care of? Because we ask people,
All of those.
how many people
Yeah.
are you gonna have there and blah, da, 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 da,
So
da,
what you're
da,
saying
da,
is
da,
if,
da, da.
if the business is big enough to.
If it's not
a
permitted,
variance, if
right.
It's not permitted and needs a variance, if the business is large enough to do that, that is another
But at what point do we determine that the business is large enough that it needs to? do
variance.
Well,
They
what
need a
about
variance for that.
a,
That's what it is right now.
Well, it'd be like a home-based beauty parlor. It's the same scenario.
or what about a
Which basically
CPA or
goes
an
to when they're
attorney?
big enough to be noticed.
I don't know, okay? I just know.
Maybe that
that
falls in
there
where the
That's a
modern
good
definition.
point.
Several beauty parlors that are run out of
Yes.
garages,
There are.
okay, in the village, and they're very popular, and the woman or the ladies that run it do very well. I think we need a broader definition for our code
Okay.
that helps us.
So he'll
Yeah,
come up
have
with
a
definition and then
delineation
we'll,
That we,
Alright.
where if there's something that's an issue, okay, then it has to be dealt with as a variance.
All right, anything else before we turn over to public comment?
Just one comment, Matt, back on October 1st, we did have a list of topics for the ZAC to discuss. And I just want to clarify that we are going to get back to those topics at some point in time after we do all these breakout discussions.
What do you?
Those
which
topics were
topics?
things.
Is there a list or a
Yeah,
document?
so here's the list you sent out to all of us because we all contributed to it. So we had signage, ADUs, PDDs, HDC, residential uses within the central business district. We had also a topic called multiple uses within an R1 and grandfathering pre-existing conditions. Changes in tenancy requiring planning board or zoning board actions, which we also expanded to the site plan review process, which is also part of the breakout. Area and bulk schedules, frontage, lot sizes, and setbacks was one whole topic. Blight or property upkeep. We did the mobile homes and condos. We did the flood maps and flood insurance. We had schedule of uses by district. Peter, you added short-term rentals. I added the bigger topic of enforcement and non-conformity, and we also had home-based businesses on there. So I would hope that we would go back to that email
I'm looking for
and
right now,
make
when
sure
is it,
we-
October 1st?
October 1st and make sure that we also cover those
I think it's
things.
the 11th.
No, I've got it.
With that, there's
Topics for Zach.
very meaty stuff in there.
October 1 is when this whole thing started.
Yeah, I think that was the
And
first.
we may have expanded it at, further topics, but I'm just asking that we also do a quick overview of those topics.
So
Because we
Part
didn't
of
have
those-
little breakouts there, but these are topics that came to light as a result of discussion topics that started to filter through.
So, do you remember that spreadsheet we put together to figure out which topics we needed to break out into and conquer and divide, or divide and conquer? That is on that's on the Google Drive. Here are the topics that we actually broke out and went into yes, so
Have it.
that one right there, I would say that's more of an inclusive list of all topics, because it's essentially all sections of the code are that list, the top section that we actually had breakout sessions with, and then the bottom ones, we thought that those need to be going to Chris, because we're not gonna have the bandwidth to even get to them.
So Chris has had those now for months and months, probably close to at least 7 or 8 months. Has he done anything about animals, auctions, bingo, blasting?
I guess we'll see.
buildings?
I guess we'll see.
Let's ask him so that we can.
So I'll ask him when
at
his
least
next
start
draft
hearing
goes.
What his thoughts on those are.
Cause he has, I think if you recall, he said, I can't recall off the top of my head, there's a phase 1 document, which was a lot of procedural stuff. The phase 2 may have more of these meaty
Yeah.
things in here for us to review.
I think it's time we talk about gas stations, noise, peddling, garage sales, skateboards, solid waste, all the things he's had in front of him and his firm.
So
for the
which
last-
topics would we like to talk about? That's actually a good point. That's a good segue. So let's pick the topics for next time.
When is our next meeting?
December 5th.
Yes, the 5th, and then the 19th. Those are the last 2 of the year. And then Marilyn, I believe last month you were going to look into booking.
I have booked everything.
Can you send me those so I can put them on our official?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everything is here except for one meeting in.
That's fine. Just send them so I can put them on those so everybody knows the same
Yeah.
document we can get
Yeah.
on. Any recommendations for topics for next time?
Well, since we haven't really gotten into a hell of a lot of the basic zoning issues that we face all of the time, I would like to start looking at our schedules,
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and we should.
our
do
area
a
and bulk
schedule.
schedules. I mean, we've been spending a lot of time on fluff. This is the meat, and this is where we have to meet all the time because of these.
Okay.
Biggest central
Sounds like
business
it's one
district,
topic for next time.
at least one meeting.
I would say at least one, maybe more.
Any other,
Can
any
we
disagreement,
really
any?
do that without Chris's feedback
Yes.
on where he needs to move us forward? I mean, I thought that was the whole point of him sending out that draft in August. We didn't have the tables or the illustrations for that matter. We only had the verbiage. And shouldn't he have that by now based on working more than half a year in the village on code?
What are you talking about?
I think the question is whether there's language from Chris on this subject for us to compare to yet.
Because we
And
have the procedural stuff and he held.
I think
held
we
the
can have that
illustrations
discussion
back.
without having that, but it would certainly be nice if it was done already. But if it's not there already, then I think
Well, we're talking
there's
about
certainly
like
a lot to talk
schedule of
about.
uses, right? That,
We're talking about, in the central business district, the minimum frontage is 50 feet and every lot on Route 50 is 25 feet. Those things need to be
The area and
changed.
bulk schedules and the uses within the district, that's is the issue, okay? in
That's
terms
the
of what's
main
permitted,
issue.
What's not permitted. That's essentially where we first end up on zoning and planning.
Yeah,
Isn't the real big issue, the umbrella issue, how are we going to deal with non-conforming structures?
no,
No,
Oh, it isn't.
no, absolutely
Not,
not.
not
No.
what
And that's
they, not
certainly an
what
issue,
they want to do
But
with A
that's,
and B.
that's not, this is,
We want to, they want to adjust it so make it use common sense what's going on in our village.
So apply it to tables A and B is what you're saying.
Yes,
And
right.
then- And then deal with the non-conforming.
Correct. The
Yes.
non-conforming will be another issue.
yes.
Okay, so it sounds like area and bulk is at least one of next time.
yeah, and
Anything
throw in
else?
pre-existing non-conforming along with it.
Sure.
We're gonna need
We
more
won't
one
get in
minute
there,
for that.
because it'd be right
I
in
don't
that
think-
first meeting, but we will.
We can figure it out. though. It's just common sense stuff. You know what you need all the time.
Okay, drafting phase 2 section of code based on community feedback, interviews, Zach input, plans, previous first pass. Please note this language is undertaking. Sections of the code for each district will include proposed statement summary, uses of each district, typical dimensional standards, additional design standards, signage, corporate. So that's in phase 2. He's going to give us that. Yeah, I skipped over a bunch, but basically Chris's email back on the 16th of October, if you were to look, he lays out what he's going to deliver next in his next phased document.
and you said that included use. And sounds like area and bulk regulations as well, lot sizes.
So I can ask Chris when he's going to deliver. So let's plan on having area and bulk next time. I'll ask Chris, hey, can we get this draft? It'd be easier for us to react to something versus just talk about something.
Exactly.
That's the area and bulk ones. I hear you. Those do seem like very critical parts of our code. I'm not sure I have the spatial mind to look at this and say, this is the right lot size, or this is the right setback.
Well, I think in that case, we just defer to Chris.
Right.
Because he's the one that sees us every
And
day.
I-
And this is the one where we actually have kind of information about what's realistic, because this is the area that we're actually dealing with things needing variances and things being problems. Almost everything is coming from this. So this is where we can say pretty definitively, these are the problems.
Yeah.
And I think both Anna and Cameron and I, okay, can help anybody who doesn't understand what happens with this, okay, to be able to quantify it to some level.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, because it is most of everything. It's certainly involved with the with zoning in terms of I want to do this or I want to do that on this lot, and I don't have enough space because it says I have to have this much space and I don't have it, but every one of my neighbors is on the same size lot.
So you'll be able to bring that data to the ZAC meeting at the next meeting,
I
so
don't
we
s-
can
we can
understand
certainly,
the magnitude of
As
what
we
the problem
dive
is.
in.
Probably not data, but
Okay. so
Anecdotal
we've got some-
data.
We've got topics, area and bulk schedules, possibly more than one day.
Data would be great.
Thank you.
Matt, I'll ask Chris to see where that phase 2 is there, so easier to react to. All right, last topic is public comments.
sorry, can I ask one more? I promise, very quick question. Something Marilyn said at the top of the meeting just reminded me. I had been asked several times since the public workshop by a couple of different people whether we are going to release something publicly with outcomes from that. I know that we had put the PowerPoint up. Is it possible to put the, I think just the summary of what the board said from Chris up with the
I don't-
PowerPoint?
I don't see why not. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I have that. I asked him for that because I wanted to verify that the stakeholder plan met up with the map, and I also have that. I have the dot map that he gave us. And I also have the comments that the public gave us on each one of the boards. So
And
I
I think will
think
just
that's
be helpful,
important.
helpful to show that something came out of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, that's a good
He's
one.
got takeaways and.
Yeah, like the summation, the summary, so I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
he sent
Okay.
it, Matt sent it in an email.
All right, say, Jen, anybody on Zoom
That we-
that has a comment? Jen, if you're still awake and with us?
I think she was leaving it.
I'm here. I'm here. It just takes me a minute to wake everything up and hit all the right buttons. There is absolutely no one besides me listening to you.
All right, anybody else here? Public comment?
God.
Yes.
I just want to kind of reiterate a few things that you said. One of the things that people talked about was short-term rentals and just awareness that there's been has been here for a very long time and that has been short-term rentals. And I know a lot of people in Boston have rented them and sometimes I know we have rented some Native people and then they had to move because they could. So that can be a sticky situation because a lot of people have used the and I get the Airbnb and all that other stuff. I just, when sometimes people say, I think they just take the Airbnb and most recent stuff, but we as a community, have been doing maybe housing, people in this community have been doing like housing, short-term rentals for a very long time. Same with like Global Foundries that, and they had a lot of people coming in from state across the country. Lots of people came in from Texas and we're living here.
We should expect more too.
Oh, yeah.
So that was one thing. I think we talked, I heard some speak about changes in tenancy. I think that I haven't seen or heard anything about definitions of that because I think there's misinterpretation of that for what that is and what it isn't. Home-based business, I think you guys talked about minor definition and you guys brought up a lot of very good points. I think just for, I know there's people who tutor. I know there's lawyers, there's accountants, there's a lot of different home-based businesses right in that area. And I think that would be detrimental for some of those people who've been doing these types of businesses. But I get like the noise factor and I mean, I have a relative who built a hair salon in their house across the street from my parents. So my parents' house had traffic going in and out. The signage thing, having an older business in the community, I know can be a sticky situation. We have a lot of historic type buildings and some signs are historic that have been kind of gone after to we take it down, they don't follow the rules. And it's like, well, this is a sign that's been up for a long time, but other businesses within the community. We talked about the flags. There is something in the code that does say you're not advertising the flag, and maybe they said it and I missed it, but you can have indicating to the general public a business location available to serve the public. So it does have that, like in advertising. I get like the look of it sometimes people don't like. I think there's a fine line and how long you should have it out for, for 3 years when you opened up 3 years ago. And I get, as a new business, you're trying to attract as much customers as you can to where your location is so they can find you. So I get that this is a sticky situation, but it does say in the code that you can have those flag or banner type stuff. But you're not advertising, but you can have that you're open or something like that. And if there's conflicts, which there does seem to be a lot of conflicts. So we're just kind of going through some of the stuff that you guys had mentioned and just reiterating different things that I had seen or know about what has happened.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anyone else have a comment? Yes.
So I was encouraged by some of the things I heard tonight. So I'm glad that Matt, you're going to ask about the date for a second workshop that is in the work plan and it's paid for. So it's great to have that on the schedule. So if you get it on, whenever it makes sense in your timing, but that is important that it happens. I'm also happy to hear that the products of the last workshop will be made available to the public. That was going to be customized. I'm glad you guys all agree that should happen. And I think people were interested in that and they will be interested in seeing that. Home-based businesses. that brings to mind, the town of Boston, not long ago, updated their code and it included language on home-based businesses. I'm not saying it's the perfect language, but this speaks to the process a little bit. I think when ideally, Chris would get you a draft section and then you respond to that draft section. That would be the ideal, and ideally, Matt, you would get a very sort of specific timeline of expectations from Chris, like, okay, in December, what will you have ready for us? I don't know, Marilyn, did you mention that there were 2 sections he delivered recently? I thought you said that at the beginning.
He
of the
only
meeting.
delivered the first draft, which he called procedural.
No, but I thought at the beginning of the meeting, you said you just got 2 sections, but anyway, maybe you didn't. So ideally, he would send you a draft, you respond to the wording in that draft. That would be the ideal process. If that doesn't happen for some and again, you don't have that many months left, so it'd be great to spell out what is expected when December, January, or, and get things. It'll be much less effective and efficient if he just dumps on you a final draft in March and you've never seen it before, so hopefully that won't happen. But as a second best thing, if you don't have it in front of you when you're talking about something, the towns around you, many of them and villages have updated their zoning more recently than we have. And so that has language that you can refer to. So whether it's, for example, the home-based businesses. And from my perspective, or the home-based business, my last comment is that it's, and this is based on some experience on the planning board in town of Boston, their zoning process, is it seemed to be okay to have a business that is inside someone's house that does not generate a lot of traffic, like 1 car at a time, like a lawyer and that seemed to be okay. But the place that becomes a problem, and I've experienced it personally near my house, is when the business flows outside to their yard or their garage, and it affects, because then you got the radio playing, you got sounds coming, and that is very disruptive when it's outside the house. But even when I was on the planning board, there was someone who wanted to start a chiropractic business in their house, very low impact, 1 car at a time. And the neighbors, it was a purely residential area in town of Boston, they were very upset. They're like, we're a cul-de-sac, we don't want all these cars coming in and out, in and out, in and out. We expect basically no traffic except for people who live there. So just don't overreach, because I think you will get blowback from people who aren't expecting a lot of traffic, for example, on their street or something. But in my opinion, a low impact lawyer, piano player would be fine if it's in the house.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Couple of comments, your topic for next meeting, I guess your goal really should be to have less non-conforming properties, because your code will now
Yes.
allow 50-foot lots that are on High Boulevard to be okay. You build a house on a 50-foot lot, because that's where they laid it out in the late 1800s. And, the current code says 80.
Right.
So, that sort of go back, I think other, would be good is if you did talk about setbacks. My neighbor is 7 feet. His garage is from the property line. So the house was built in the 60s. And big topic that came when I've been going to planning and zoning meetings for the last 4 or 5 years. Height of garage, it's a big one. People can't put anything, it's 12 foot. That's a topic we should discuss. So some things on your earlier discussions. Has anyone here been to Hilton Head?
No, not sure.
Yeah, it's really nice when you drive through, because the signs are all low signs, not, on the, in front of the parking, on the street front signs. The double post, nice signs. And I don't really remember, this was years ago, what they allow on the buildings, but I would think that, like you said, if it's a parking lot or whatever, you could have low signs, so when you drive, not, huge amount of signs.
And then potentially a larger sign on the building. That's the way, I would look at it. Maybe the 16 square foot for on the street. One topic on home-based, would you allow more than one home base? There's a lot of couples that are working both from home. Right now, code says only one. They could, again, the one car limit, I think would be, a good idea. One topic you didn't bring up on signs, temporary signs. That's been a big issue during elections. I think it's a 30-day limit. That doesn't make a lot of sense with early voting. Should probably recommend extending that to 60 days, so people can, get their signs out, maybe tighten up, one per candidate instead of, sign pollution, which happens when they, property puts point signs in front of their property for the same candidate. I don't think we should really allow signs up high, because it gets to look more like Central Avenue in Albany, signs, big signs. I think keeping them low, is aesthetically nicer in a historic village. And probably looking at some sign regulations in towns like Hilton Head, but like in Manchester, Vermont, where it's historic, it has that feel, to use that aesthetic. Yeah, other towns that are really historic and look really nice when you drive through. These businesses seem to do pretty well. So, my comments.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else?
Mention one other thing about signage, just that the signage should be kind of making sure that even if you had a large business, that the rules apply even from a Fortune 500 company to a small business owner. Because as you said about the digital signs, I get government property, but sometimes that doesn't apply. And things are maybe
Enforced,
allowed
not applied,
for
enforced.
Fortune 500 companies, but your small business owners who want a small sign, but might not fit in the rules, have a harder time to try to get a sign in comparison to, like, let's say O'Reilly's or Dunkin', and it's just an awareness that we really want small businesses to thrive here and to support them and to keep them going.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jen. That's a wrap. Appreciate your help.
For
Just
Chris.
takes me a minute to hit all the buttons. Good night. Have a good night. Talk to you later. Oh, happy holidays.